When discussing anime, it's useful to remember the differences between our Western European culture and Eastern Asian culture. The heroes of Western European culture tend to be praised for individuality and creativity. Essentially, the greatest heroes are those who can forward their own agenda. Heroes range from Siegfried of Norse mythology and Thomas More, a politician of the English King Henry VIII's court. The culture of Eastern Asia is founded primarily on Confucian philosophy, which idealizes the social serving hero. Whatever the goal of the hero, they must serve as a moral example to the public and achieve a result that benefits the public. Before I go on with this analysis, this is not to say that virtues in various cultures differ, or this idea deviates far from Joseph Campbell's Hero of a Thousand Faces. This to me is about the expression of the hero story, based on the ideas that have grown in a culture over centuries. So, this materializes in the differences between the stories told in both cultures. One is that, in Western European cultures, the hero typically has to overcome a specific obstacle. The obstacle is crafted to test the hero's perseverance and skill. Whereas in Eastern Asian culture, the obstacle is typically a thing destructive to law and order, whether it's Susanoo, the vengeful god, a demon, or some kind of deceiver. Minamoto Yoshitsune defeats the spider demon murdering innocent victims. The Buddha repels the demons of lust that fuel human suffering. The evil must either be reformed or reconciled with society, or be utterly eradicated. In my opinion, shonen has had a hard time dealing with that type of hero story. Shonen's audience being young adults, and the culture's need to present moral heroes to this demographic, eradicating one's enemies does not look good in the post-World War II world. Therefore, reconciliation is considered the vastly superior option. The problem is that manga/anime are usually very long-going stories. In a hero story, a character naturally develops to a better and better state. So now Naruto reconciles with Gaara, right? But the story must go on, therefore a more extreme villain must emerge. Then this villain is reconciled with, and the cycle continues, culminating in the most extreme villain who desires the most extreme wish, and the main character Tak no Jutsus them. Most shonen mangas succumb to this curse, such as Zatch Bell, My Hero Academia, Fairy Tail, and the second season of Mob Psycho, let's say. That aspect of shonen is what makes Dr. Stone special, and not special at the same time. That's actually how I feel about Dr. Stone in general. It's special and not special at the same time. The writing is traditional, as in there's this flawless, morally correct main character, there's one clear obstacle for each storyline, nothing gets muddled, essentially. It's not like an epic story in terms of like a Tolkien, the Lord of the Rings type thing, right? But the central issue, which is the reconstruction of society, is posed primarily as an intellectual, not moral problem, which is a postmodern twist, and this reflects in the philosophy of Dr. Stone. Dr. Stone is not special in that it has the typical message of a shonen, which is that those who do not conform to the ideals of society must be re-educated and reconciled with. The typical argument, in order to justify the extremes the heroes go to reconcile with the villains, is an argument of nihilism. If you don't reconcile with us, everything you do will be useless, and you will suffer, because being evil naturally leads to unhappiness. But Dr. Stone from the beginning deals with the obvious counter-argument. The villains are content being evil, and the villains are intelligent enough to build a feasible society that continues to be evil. So Tsukasa desires to build a society without the development of modern science. He argues that science empowers a tyrannical few to control and oppress the majority. People clamor for the privileges of the few, thus causing corruption and evil. And we know, from this century, he is right. Given Tsukasa's intelligence, he is likely to be able to create and sustain his meritocratic society during his lifetime. Tsukasa argues of Senku that in the old world, there was not enough to ensure the happiness and prosperity of 9 billion people, and that science had created the circumstances of large population and few resources. And then Senku responds with this quote that is surprisingly memorable to me. He says, If the world cannot sustain 9 billion people, then the 9 billion people will find a way to sustain 9 billion people. And on second thought, it was a pretty incredible argument. Like, for someone like me, who's pretty pessimistic about things. By the way he phrased it, he did not say that science will explicitly save the world, but that human intellect and altruism will. Senku actually flipped Tsukasa's logic back at him. Tsukasa argues that humans are inherently not fair and that laws must be imposed to prevent the corruption of humanity. But Tsukasa's notions of equality come from human intellect. These are ideals developed by the Enlightenment philosophers and not come naturally from the feudal world, and were responses to the material circumstances of the moment. In short, as much as science is the human intellect solving problems of material, philosophy, the ideals Tsukasa himself imbibed from a democratic society, is the human intellect solving problems of social production. In a sentence, Senku conveyed science is not something parallel to the development of society. It is part and parcel with the idea that mankind can transcend the fundamental concept that life is suffering. It's very clear Inagaki intends for this message too. For example, after Senku's quote-unquote sorcery battle of Chrome, he realizes that Chrome must have expended enormous effort to have acquired his knowledge. He muses to himself that regardless of Tsukasa's actions, the human race will naturally produce someone who is merely curious about things. Then there's the existence of Asagiri Gen. When Gen first appears, we recognize him as cunning and duplicitous. That he wears the clothes of a fashion not seen in the stone world means he is against the villagers and by extension Senku. He speaks in an urbanite manner and makes one think of the type of people Tsukasa deplored, the sort of person who wants to use his intellect to control others. He does not have the honesty and sincerity of the sciencers, Senku and Chrome. But Inagaki cleverly flips this around. Gen becomes Senku's ally. Gen plainly realizes that though a world of science actually decreases his social rank in the new world, and therefore his control over people, it exponentially increases the individual's happiness. In turn, Gen selflessly uses his intellect to aid Senku in matters of psychology. That's pretty incredible. The very person Tsukasa argued would use their skills to increase their own power and resources is devoting himself to help some girl not be sick anymore. In this, he is portrayed not lesser than Senku, and he actually saves everyone's skin once in a while. For Gen's knowledge of people underpins the very foundation of war and work management. He is also among those 9 billion who will save the 9 billion. It is a demonstration that it is not only science that will build and restore society, but all of human intellect. The ever-optimistic philosophy of Dr. Stone is really inspiring to me and should be what shonen is about. Everyone is part of the solution. Everyone is a productive agent. From a logical standpoint, the literal permutability of the human genome means that everyone expresses a unique trait, from Suika to Magma. Of course, I can think of several counter-arguments to this ideal, but within the circumstances of Dr. Stone, the conclusion is logical. It's up to us, audience and weird, awkward anime critics alike, to analyze the applicability to our world. And that's all I had to say about Dr. Stone. Thank you for listening, and talk to you guys later.